Hi everyone, my name is Kiri Carini and I'm a Science Communication Assistant at the Integration and Application Network, and today I'm going to give you an introduction to using ArcMap for your mapping projects. ArcMap is the desktop version of part of a wider suite of GIS products by the company Esri. If you have this software, you probably got it from your university, or you may have downloaded like a student copy of ArcGIS, which you can get from esri.com to download, and from there you'll be able to use the desktop application. There's really two components to the application. There's ArcMap and then there's ArcCatalog. And ArcCatalog is basically your data organizer, rather than browsing through your Windows Explorer and your folders, because GIS data is packaged to get a package of multiple files to display, your data. It's easier to view your data in ArcCatalog, and I'll give you a little bit of an introduction to ArcCatalog in a little bit. But let's get started with opening a new map. I have one open here, but we'll go ahead and open a brand new one. It'll load, and it'll take you to this getting started page, and these are some of my recent maps, but there's standard page sizes that you can choose, and you can always change this later down the line. This is going to be basically your standard 8.5 by 11 page, and I just go with a default. This inner rectangle here, if you click this, this is your data frame, so this is where your layers are going to live. And then the outer rectangle is your page bounds. So you can move this data frame around and adjust it, leave room for a legend over here maybe, or if you're gonna do your legend later in Illustrator, you can go to the full page. Like I said, this is called a data frame over here. This is the corresponding data frame within the table of contents. The table of contents is where your list of layers are going to go as you start to build your map. Across the top you have all of your toolbars, and I'll go into what some of those are in a little bit. And then over on the right here, you have some tabs that can expand, and they're sort of docked over on the side here, and one of them is the ArcCatalog. It can operate as a standalone program. You see I have one over here that it can open, but it's really handy to have this off to the side here, because you can then drag and drop your data into your map. If you don't have this, or you accidentally close it out, you can reopen it up here. Here's ArcCatalog, here's ArcToolbox, and that'll open those up here. And then you simply use this little push pin to pin it to the side here, and that way it's always there and it'll auto hide when you're not using it. So you always want to save your map. I know that's kind of self-explanatory, but ArcMap is notorious for crashing, especially once you start using a lot or large data sets. So you always want to save frequently, and spare yourself the pain of losing a lot of hard work. Other things about the toolbars, you have your standard things that you can do, edit, undo, cut, copy, paste. You can create bookmarks of different views of your data based on your extent. You can insert things like scale bar, north arrow, legend, text boxes. You can add more data frames into your maps. You can have multiple data frames living down here. Selection is a really important thing to be able to do in ArcMap, and we'll do some of that later once we add some data. Geoprocessing is basically all of your tools and analysis work, which I don't think I'm going to get into in this video, but there's tools to do pretty much everything you can imagine with your data. Other things, this is going to be key. And all of these, have little explanation boxes as you hover over them. Adding data, this is, in addition to dragging and dropping things from your Arc catalog, you can add your data here in this add data. There is a little drop down arrow that will give you some additional options for adding data, but for now we're just going to choose the regular add data. So I'm actually going to hop over to the map that I already started with some base data. You can see over here the layers that I've already added. So I have some Maryland counties, I have some state outlines, and then I have the Chesapeake Bay water body. And those all live as layers in here, and they have their own, if you left double click, it's going to open up the layer properties, and there's a lot of information in here, but the most important things that you want to know are your display tab lets you set transparencies, and then your Symbology tab is where you're going to change what your layer looks like, and then there's lots of other tools in here as well. Now if you right click, instead of double click, single click, right click on your layer, it opens up a menu of other tools. This is where you can copy your layer, you can remove your layer, you can open your attribute table. So, geospatial data has two components to it. It has the spatial side of the data, which is like where on Earth the data is located, and it's the actual latitude and longitude points that make up the bounds of whatever it is your data is, and then connected to that is your attribute data, and your attribute data is everything about that place that is stored in the database, whether it's the name, population, other analysis or calculations, the acreage or area, those sort of things are the attributes to your GIS data. So here you can open your attribute table. This is just the Chesapeake Bay, so it doesn't really have any additional information, but if I were to open the attribute table for the counties, you would see it has the names of the counties and the districts as the attributes for each of these areas. So let's go back to our single right click on our layer. Other things you can do over here is zoom to your layer. So if you see right now, Maryland is kind of cut off. I'm not showing all my counties, but if I zoom to layer, it zooms to the furthest extent needed to show the entire layer. So now I see my entire state with all my county boundaries. Let's go back here. Other things that are useful here are the selection tab, or the selection part of the menu. I'll show you about selecting in a minute here, but a handy thing is make this the only selectable layer. And by clicking this, especially when you start adding lots of layers into your map, if you need to select something, this helps isolate the layer that you want to select to make sure that that's the only one that you're picking up when you're selecting things. So that's a good thing to know. And then you can also get to your layer properties this way, so it opens up the same dialog box as if you left double click. So you can change the outline of your counties. We could make it, instead of gray, we could make it sort of a yellowish tan color. So let's talk about symbology. Well, let's talk about adding data first. So let's go to our add data, and in order for ArcMap, if you don't have it set up already, to be able to find where to get your GIS data, you're going to need to choose Connect to Folder. When you choose Connect to Folder, you're going to browse to wherever your GIS data is stored and choose to connect to something. So I'll just connect to this one because I don't think I have a connection yet, and say OK. Okay, so now if I go up a level here, my New York Harbor is now a folder that I can access in my ArcMap. So let's go to Chesapeake Bay, and let's add, you can add one at a time and click it and click add. You can add multiple by holding shift and selecting shift or control to select multiple ones. So I want to add these three, no, this one, and this one. And I selected all three of those by holding down the control as I was selecting them. And it'll go ahead and add them. You can grab these and reorder them if you want. Move them around, so your lines and points are above your polygons. So now that we have our data added, let's look more at selecting and the attribute tables. So I've added these polygons that I got from the State of Maryland GIS portal, and I don't really know anything about it or how they're classified or what they are. So I'm going to open the attribute table and just take a look at them. So it looks like there's not a whole lot of information, but it does give you the acres, so the area of each of these polygon areas and what county they're in. So just out of curiosity, I'm going to if you click over here, left click, it'll select one, and it's a little tiny one here. Let's see. Here's a bigger one, here's a bigger one. You can see it kind of highlighted right here. Now if you were to right click on this particular highlighted one, you can say zoom to selected or zoom to, and it's going to take you deep into your map down to the level of what you've selected. Here's a go back to previous extent button, and that'll take you back to whatever the last extent you had in your map. So you have some selection tools up here. This is clear selection. You can clear it here. You can also clear selection up here. You may want to use select tools if you only need a small part of your data set, or if you're particularly interested in the attributes of that data set. So that's just kind of an overview of the attribute table. You can do a lot of things in here. You can calculate area, you can sort. So I sorted by county here, so now they're in alphabetical order. You can export this table into Excel, all sorts of things. Now let's get into symbology, because everyone wants to know how to make your map look pretty. So let's first tackle these priority preservation areas. So let's go into our layer properties and our symbology. There's different ways to show your data. Now, if you remember, there wasn't a whole lot of attribute attribute information associated with this data layer, but it did have which county each polygon was in. So a single symbol means that every polygon is going to be symbolized the same. It's going to look the same. If you go down to categories, there's some other options, and this is probably the one that you would use the most, which is unique values. And from there you can choose which attribute you want to show unique values by. So I'm going to say I want these to be shown by by county, so all the counties. So I'm going to add values, and by doing that, it's going to basically group them symbol-wise by county. So you can see there's 67 polygons in Caroline County, and there's 2 polygons in Anne Arundel County. And if you click OK, you can see what it's going to look like. So you can see the county delineations now. You've broken up the preservation areas by their county delineations. But I don't think that's really necessary in this case, so I'm going to put it back to a single symbol and just pick a color that's a little more amenable. And I'm going to get rid of the outline, because if you'll notice the gray around all the colors, so some of these polygons are really small and the outlines are kind of overwhelming the polygon areas. So by removing the outline, it's going to give you a cleaner looking polygon. And then just hit OK, and let's see how it looks. That's much better. Another thing you can do, if you go back into your layer properties, I touched on in the display tab, you can set a transparency and just kind of play around with how that looks, with how you have your things layered. I think it looks a little nicer when you have polygons on top of polygons to add transparency where it makes sense to do so. So let's move on to our roads. So roads are lines. One nice thing about ArcMap is they have a lot of preset symbologies. So these are some of the line presets. You can see, they have a county boundary, and they have some different roads. So you can choose a preset and then customize it as needed. Roads are usually black or gray unless they're an interstate. And then we have our point data. So point data too, you can kind of customize it how you want. So what I did here was, rather than click on the name of the layer and go into the layer properties, you can also just click the symbol, and it won't let you change how your symbol is displayed. Like if you want unique values or something like that, it's just gonna let you go in and change. So if you want to make this bigger, or you want to change the shape, it's gonna leave it as everything. You can search and see if maybe there's a symbol that already corresponds. There's a reef here. I don't really love that. So let's just go back and pick something else and kind of adjust it a little bit and see how that looks. Those are still really big. So you can quickly come in here and make them smaller. Those are our artificial reef points. So that's sort of the high level of how to do symbology. There's many layers that you can dig down into as far as customizing and changing. So you've got all these colors to choose from, but you can also put in like custom RGB or CMYK colors. You can choose from the color ramp. You can change the type of fill, so you can make it a line fill and change the angles and the lines. You can make them hatch marks. You can make a gradient. Can do lots of different things for all of these, and it's just a matter of kind of playing around with them and seeing what you like. I didn't touch on quantities, so this is another way to display data. If you have attribute information that has numerical value, you can set it to show ranges of value. So you can choose an attribute table. This isn't a good example because the only thing with numbers is acres, but you can see that it'll create these ranges and then a color ramp for those ranges, and you can customize all of this and change how your data is classified. If you have values like you know, sampling sites and things like that that have, you know, different thresholds to them, and you can do it with colors, you can do it with symbols, and it gives you kind of a little preview that allows you to see what exactly that symbology might do for you. But I don't think that's really appropriate for any of the layers that I downloaded. So that's the basics of making the map. Like I said before, up here at the top you can insert your, you know, north arrow. You know, kind of the main components that all maps should have are a north arrow, a scale bar, and a legend. There's lots to choose from. You can pick one that fits the aesthetics of your map. You can pick from scale bars. There's lots of different choices, and there's tools. You know, once you choose one, you can go in and customize it. I have a couple over here. This is actually 2 scale bars together, so that I can show miles and kilometers at the same time. But if you click on it, you can, you know, change where the marks and separations are, and the labeling and the text size and things like that, and really customize it. And you definitely want to have a scale bar when you bring your map into Illustrator, because you won't be able to tell what the scale is once you come into Illustrator. And it's really important for the integrity of your map to maintain your scale. What else? The legend. The legend wizard for ArcMap is pretty easy. You have your map layers, and you can select which things in your map layer you want to have show in your legend. Like, I don't need my state boundaries to show in my legend, so I can take those out. Don't need these, pretty much. I don't need the Chesapeake Bay on my legend. Pretty much my 3, my point line and polygon. You can set how many columns, so if you have a lot of data, you can break it up into multiple columns, and you just kind of work your way through the wizard. And this stuff you can change after the fact too. Give your legend a name, if you have a title for your map or something like that. Or you can delete it so you don't have a legend title. Can give your legend a border and a background if it needs to. If it doesn't need it, don't add it. You don't need extraneous things. Some of this stuff, this allows you to change the size of your legend shapes. This does too, and allows you to create spacing and things like that. So lots of ways to customize your legend if you don't like how it looks. You can change by just clicking on your layer. You can change the name of this so it looks a little nicer. So priority preservation areas, and it's going to update that in your legend. Change this to roads, artificial reefs. So now it's a little bit more manageable. And then you can come in here and work with your symbology of your legend. If you go here under items, you can click on here and choose how you want it organized. The label symbol. Trying to think, where do you get, this is how you want your patch and your description together. So there's a lot of different options. You can play around with that. You can adjust your columns here too as well. So I'm just going to leave that here for now. And there's your map. Don't forget to hit save. And then if you're ready to put it into Illustrator, I think there's another video that goes into that, but basically you can also just export your map as a PDF, as an SVG, as a JPEG, as a TIFF. You can export it as an AI file as well, directly. So that's sort of the basics of building your map in ArcMap. Really quickly, I'll just show you some data sources. So the IMAP Maryland, State of Maryland has really great, very well organized place to get GIS data. You can search up here, or you can browse their categories for data, which is what I did. I just grabbed 3 data layers out of here, and you can download the shape files that correspond. They have all the information about what the data is, all the metadata for it. The national map, nationalmap.gov, has a lot of data you can download. You can go through here and pick out, all sorts of different things. They have NAEP, they have hydrography, they have boundaries, they have transportation. There's all sorts of things in here. A Google search will, get you pretty far too if you're looking for like other states or county GIS data. Here's the Census Bureau. So there's a lot of resources out there. Sometimes hunting down the data is, the hardest part of making your map. But for the most part, if you dig far enough, you can find what you're looking for. And it doesn't hurt to, email the email contacts for GIS too. And a lot of times people can help you track down stuff that you're looking for. So I think I'll leave it with that for now. If you have any questions or need help with anything, need to troubleshoot anything while you're working on your maps, don't hesitate to reach out to me and I will do my best to help you. So good luck, and I can't wait to see your maps.